is creepy.
Story 1. I worked the overnight shift at a Walmart just outside a small Midwest town, the kind of place that stays open 24 hours because there's nothing else around. Night shift was always strange, but after midnight it felt like the store changed personalities. The lights stayed the same, the aisles didn't move, but the atmosphere felt heavier, like the building itself was tired of pretending to be normal. Around 2:30 a.m., the store was nearly empty. Just a few truck drivers, a couple of insomniacs, and one man who stood near the clearance racks for over an hour without touching anything. He didn't browse. He didn't check his phone. He just stood there, facing the shelves, completely still. I noticed him because every time I passed that aisle, he had shifted just enough to be facing me instead. Eventually, my manager asked me to do a floor walk and see if he needed help. As I got closer, I realized something was off about his reflection in the freezer doors behind him. It lagged. When he tilted his head, the reflection followed a second too late. I asked if he needed assistance. He turned slowly, smiled, and said my name. I hadn't been wearing a name tag. I stepped back, pretending my radio was going off. When I looked again, he was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Security later told us no one had exited the store. We checked every aisle, every bathroom, the break room, even the stockroom. He was never found. But from that night on, sometimes when I pass those freezer doors, I swear I see someone standing behind me who isn't really there. Story 2. In 2017, I was shopping at a Walmart late at night with my sister. We were wandering the store because neither of us could sleep. Around 1 a.m., the store made an announcement that one aisle was temporarily closed for cleaning. It was the toys aisle. That alone felt strange. Who cleans toys at 1 a.m.? As we walked past the aisle, we heard a child crying. Soft at first, then louder. It sounded real, panicked. We stopped and looked at each other, already uncomfortable. There were no kids in the store that late. We stood there debating whether to tell an employee when the crying suddenly stopped. Then a small voice said, very clearly, "Can you help me?" The voice came from deep inside the toys aisle, past the barricade. My sister took one step forward before I grabbed her arm. Something felt wrong. The voice didn't sound scared anymore. It sounded calm. Expectant. We went to customer service instead. When we told them what we heard, the employee went pale and immediately called for a manager. They didn't explain anything to us. They just asked us to leave the store and said the aisle would remain closed for the rest of the night. As we were walking out, I glanced back. At the end of the toys aisle, I saw a small figure standing completely still, just beyond the barricade. It didn't move. It just watched us leave. Story 3. I used to work asset protection at Walmart, which meant watching cameras for hours on end. Most of the time, it was boring. People shoplifting, employees cutting corners, nothing exciting. But one night, around 3 a.m., I noticed movement in the automotive section. The store was almost empty, and that area should have been deserted. On camera, I saw a woman pushing an empty cart back and forth between the same two aisles. She wasn't picking anything up. She wasn't looking at products. She was just walking. Slowly. Repeating the same path. I zoomed in, and that's when I realized she didn't have a face. Where her face should have been, there was just smooth skin. I radioed another employee to check the aisle in person. He walked right through the area she was on camera, but when he reported back, he said no one was there. As he was talking, I watched the woman stop walking and turn directly toward the camera. She raised her hand and pressed it against the lens from the inside of the screen. Every monitor went black for a full 10 seconds. When they came back on, the automotive section was empty. Management blamed a system glitch. I quit 2 weeks later. Even now, I can't watch security footage without feeling like something on the other side might notice me watching. Story 4. A friend of mine worked overnight maintenance at Walmart. His job was to clean bathrooms, mop floors, and take trash to the back. One night, while cleaning the men's restroom, he heard someone enter and lock the door behind them. He assumed it was a customer and kept working. Then he heard whispering. Not talking. Whispering. Multiple voices, overlapping, coming from inside a single stall. He knocked and asked if everything was okay. The whispering stopped immediately. A few seconds later, someone knocked back, from inside the stall wall next to him. Not the door. The wall. He backed out of the restroom and called his supervisor. When they returned with another employee, the restroom was empty. No customers. No unlocked stalls. But written on the mirror in foggy fingerprints were the words, "We close together." Corporate brushed it off as vandalism. The next week, that same restroom was closed permanently, for renovations. It's still closed to this day. No one ever explained why. Story 5. The strangest Walmart experience I ever had happened as a customer. I was shopping late, around midnight, when the intercom came on. It wasn't the usual announcement. There was no greeting. Just breathing. Heavy, uneven breathing that lasted far too long. Then a voice spoke, low and distorted, saying, "Attention shoppers, you need to leave." People froze. Some laughed nervously, assuming it was a prank. Then the lights flickered. Not fully off, just dimmer, like the store was blinking. The voice came back, louder this time. "You shouldn't be here." Employees started rushing people toward the exits. No explanation. No alarms. Just urgency. As I was leaving, I noticed something on the far wall near electronics. Shadows. Dozens of them, stretched unnaturally long, moving against the light in ways that didn't match any bodies. The store closed for the rest of the night. The official excuse was a power issue. But ever since then, whenever I walk into a Walmart late at night, I listen carefully to the intercom. Because once you've heard it tell you to leave, you never forget how serious it sounded. Story 6. I worked as a cashier at a Walmart in southern Texas for almost 3 years, mostly closing shifts. You learn pretty quickly that Walmart at night isn't the same place it is during the day. During daylight hours, it feels loud, cluttered, alive. At night, especially after midnight, it feels hollow. Sounds travel farther. Footsteps echo. And you start noticing people who don't quite fit. There was one regular who only came in after 1 a.m. He was tall, extremely thin, and always wore the same dark hoodie, no matter the weather. He never bought much. Usually just a single item, something random like a sponge, a can of soup, or a pack of batteries. What bothered me was that he never let go of the cart. Even while paying, he'd grip the handle like he was afraid someone would take it from him. One night, when the store was almost empty, he came through my lane. As I rang up his items, I noticed his cart was full. Completely full. But not with merchandise. It was stacked with old Walmart receipts. Hundreds of them. Crumpled, yellowed, some so faded they were barely readable. I asked him if he wanted bags. He looked at me slowly and said, "I already paid. I just keep forgetting." That's when I noticed the dates on the receipts. Some were from years ago. Some were from stores that no longer existed. When I looked back up at him, he was staring at the security camera above my register, smiling faintly. The system froze mid-transaction. When it reset, he and the cart were gone. Asset Protection checked the footage later. According to them, no one had been in my lane at all. Story 7. My sister worked in Walmart's online grocery pickup department. Her job involved walking through the store early in the morning, gathering orders before customers arrived. She liked it because it was quiet. Too quiet, sometimes. One morning around 5 a.m., she noticed one order kept updating itself. Every time she finished picking it, new items would appear on the list. The items were strange. Things that didn't belong together. Children's socks. Rope. Duct tape. Trash bags. When she finally completed the order for the third time, the pickup slot updated with a name that wasn't in the system. Just a single word, waiting. She went outside to the pickup area, expecting a car. There was none. The parking lot was empty except for her vehicle and a few employee cars. Her handheld device pinged again. The order was marked as arrived. The app showed the customer was standing directly behind her. She spun around. No one was there. The device slipped from her hands and hit the ground. When she picked it up, the order was gone. Completely erased. Management told her it was a software glitch. She transferred departments the next week. She still refuses to use grocery pickup anywhere. Story 8. I was shopping alone late one night when I heard the sound of running footsteps behind me. I stepped aside instinctively, expecting a kid or an employee rushing somewhere. No one passed me. The footsteps stopped right where I was standing. I turned around. The aisle was empty. As I continued walking, I realized the footsteps had started again, matching my pace exactly. When I stopped, they stopped. When I turned my head quickly, I caught movement at the end of the aisle. A person stepping just out of sight every time I looked. Eventually, I ducked into the home goods aisle and hid behind a display. I waited. After a few seconds, a cart rolled slowly past the aisle opening. No one was pushing it. The wheels squeaked softly as it moved, then stopped directly in front of where I was hiding. I held my breath. After a long pause, the cart rolled away on its own. I left the store without buying anything. As I passed the exit, I heard the cart wheels again, echoing behind me. I didn't turn around. Story 9. I worked overnight stocking in the back of Walmart, unloading trucks and organizing pallets. One area we avoided joking about was the old training room. It had been closed for years, supposedly because of asbestos. The door was locked, and no one had access. Still, sometimes during breaks, we'd hear chairs scraping inside. One night, while moving freight, I heard my name called from down the hallway. It sounded like my supervisor. I followed the voice until I was standing in front of the training room door. The voice came again, closer this time, from right behind the door. "Come on in. You're late." I reached for the handle before I realized something. The training room lights were off. The building was silent. And my supervisor was on the other side of the store. I stepped back. The voice repeated my name, angrier now. Then the door handle began to shake violently, like someone on the inside was trying to get out. Maintenance arrived later to check the door. They said it had never been unlocked. But the next morning, the lock was bent outward, as if it had been forced from inside the room. Story 10. The last story happened to me just last year. I was in Walmart late, killing time before a long drive home. The store made an announcement asking all customers to move toward the front for inventory adjustments. That alone was strange, but everyone complied. As we gathered near the registers, I noticed something unsettling. The number of people around me kept changing. I'd count maybe 20 shoppers, then blink and see far more. Then far fewer. Some of them weren't holding carts. Some weren't blinking. One woman stood completely still, staring straight ahead, her mouth slightly open like she was mid-sentence. The lights dimmed again. The announcement came back on, but this time the voice was wrong. Slower. Deeper. It said, "Thank you for waiting." Employees began opening exit doors that were normally locked. They didn't look panicked, but they didn't look normal either. Their expressions were flat, rehearsed. I followed the crowd out. As I crossed the threshold, I felt a sudden pressure in my ears, like leaving a high altitude. When I turned around to look back inside, the store lights were fully on again. Normal. Busy. Like nothing had happened. But when I checked my receipt later, it had a timestamp for a purchase I never made, dated 3 hours into the future. I don't shop at Walmart late anymore. Because whatever happens there after midnight doesn't always stay inside the store.